She collapsed onto the cold kitchen floor just minutes after her husband's plane disappeared into the bright summer sky. Her hands trembled as she reached toward the bottle that should have been sitting beside the coffee machine, but it was gone. Every cabinet had already been searched twice. Every drawer was empty. The medication that kept her heart stable had vanished the very morning her husband and his entire family left for a 74-day luxury tour across Europe. Later that afternoon, while struggling to breathe, she accidentally discovered a family group message on an old tablet that had been left behind. One sentence shattered everything she believed about marriage: "Don't tell her where the medicine is. She'll manage." In that single moment, she realized she hadn't been abandoned by one person. She had been betrayed by an entire family. If you believe kindness still matters, that forgiveness is possible, and that hope can survive even the darkest betrayal, please like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you can continue every emotional journey with our community. Clara Bennett had spent nearly 12 years believing that loyalty could heal almost anything. She wasn't naive. She simply loved deeply. Before her health began to fail, she had worked as a respected landscape architect, spending long days outdoors transforming empty parks into beautiful places where families gathered. She had always believed life rewarded hard work, compassion, and patience. Those beliefs carried her through countless difficult seasons, including the gradual decline of her health after being diagnosed with a rare cardiovascular condition that required strict medication every single day. Missing even 2 doses could cause dangerous complications. Her specialist had explained the risks so clearly that there was never any confusion. Her husband, Preston Hale, had attended every appointment. He knew exactly how important those small white tablets were. He had even promised countless times that he would never allow her to miss a dose. Promises, she would later discover, are often easiest to make when they cost nothing. Their marriage had not always been cold. In the beginning, Preston had been charming in a quiet, dependable way. He remembered birthdays, surprised her with flowers after difficult workdays, and talked endlessly about building a peaceful future together. Clara admired how close he seemed to his parents and younger siblings. Family loyalty had always impressed her because she had grown up without much extended family herself. She welcomed every holiday dinner, every birthday gathering, every summer barbecue. She overlooked the occasional rude remark from Preston's mother, Judith, believing that time and kindness would eventually soften her heart. Instead, the years slowly revealed something different. Judith never openly insulted Clara in front of others. She specialized in quiet criticism that left no visible wounds but created invisible scars. She would compliment another woman while glancing toward Clara. She would casually question whether Clara was strong enough to be a wife considering her growing health problems. She often suggested that Preston deserved someone who could keep up with life. Every comment was wrapped in a smile so innocent that anyone hearing only part of the conversation would believe she meant well. Clara kept forgiving. When her illness forced her to reduce her work schedule, Judith quietly celebrated it as proof that Clara was becoming a burden. Preston never defended his wife. Instead, he always asked Clara to ignore his mother because that's just how she is. Those words became painfully familiar. Every uncomfortable dinner. Every family vacation. Every birthday. Every holiday. That's just how she is. Little by little, Clara stopped sharing how deeply those moments hurt her. She convinced herself that peace required sacrifice. If remaining silent protected her marriage, then perhaps silence was worth it. Unfortunately, silence rarely protects anyone except the people causing the pain. The announcement of the European vacation arrived almost 6 months before the departure date. Preston explained that his parents had always dreamed of traveling across France, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, and the Netherlands together. His siblings eagerly joined the plan, transforming it into an unforgettable family adventure that would last 74 days. At first, Clara smiled. She even encouraged him to go. She knew how much family meant to him. Then she quietly asked whether they should postpone until her condition became more stable. His smile disappeared. Instead of discussing her concerns, he immediately reminded her how much money had already been spent and how impossible it would be to cancel reservations. She apologized for even asking. Over the following months, Clara noticed something she couldn't quite explain. Preston became strangely distant. He spent evenings discussing travel itineraries with his family while barely speaking to her. When she asked simple questions about meals, medications, or emergency contacts during his absence, he answered with obvious irritation. Sometimes he walked out of the room before she finished speaking. One afternoon she overheard Judith laughing during a phone call. She couldn't hear every word. Only one sentence floated clearly through the doorway. "She'll survive." The words stayed with Clara for weeks. Still, she refused to imagine the worst. The morning of the trip arrived bright and unusually warm. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows while birds filled the neighborhood with cheerful songs that felt strangely disconnected from the heaviness inside the house. Clara prepared breakfast despite feeling dizzy. She packed snacks for Preston's journey, ironed his favorite travel shirt, and even tucked a handwritten note into his suitcase wishing him unforgettable memories. He thanked her with a distracted smile that never reached his eyes. Before leaving, he reminded her that groceries had been delivered and several neighbors lived nearby if she needed help. He kissed her forehead almost mechanically. Then he walked away. She stood in the doorway watching the taxi disappear around the corner. The house instantly became painfully quiet. Her medication alarm rang 30 minutes later. She walked toward the kitchen cabinet. The bottle wasn't there. She checked another shelf. Nothing. The bathroom cabinet. Nothing. Her bedside drawer. Nothing. She searched every room. Every cabinet. Every handbag. Every storage box. Nothing. Her breathing became shallow as panic slowly replaced confusion. She knew she had picked up a 90-day prescription only 4 days earlier. She remembered placing the bottle beside the coffee machine because taking it every morning had become part of her daily routine. It hadn't simply disappeared. Someone had moved it. Or taken it. She called Preston immediately. The call went unanswered. She sent a message asking where the medication was. No response. She called Judith. Straight to voicemail. She contacted Preston's younger sister, Vanessa. No answer. Within an hour her hands began shaking from both fear and the physical effects of missing her medication. While desperately searching the house once again, she noticed an old tablet sitting inside Preston's office drawer. The battery still held a small charge. When it powered on, she realized it remained connected to the family's private messaging account. She hadn't intended to invade anyone's privacy. She only hoped someone had mentioned where the medication had been placed. Instead, she discovered messages she wished she had never read. One conversation discussed luggage. Another shared sightseeing plans. Then, buried between photographs of expensive hotels and restaurant reservations, appeared the message that stopped her heart. Judith had written only a single sentence. Don't tell her where the medicine is. She'll manage. Several people reacted with laughing emojis. One sibling replied, she always exaggerates anyway. Another added, maybe she'll finally learn independence. Preston responded only with a thumbs up. Nothing more. Nothing less. One tiny symbol erased 12 years of trust. Clara stared at the screen until her vision blurred. She reread the messages again and again, hoping she had misunderstood. There was no misunderstanding. The people she had cooked for, celebrated with, supported through illnesses, helped financially during difficult times, had knowingly hidden medication they fully understood she needed to stay alive. Her body wasn't the only thing breaking that afternoon. Her heart was collapsing beside it. For several long minutes, Clara simply sat on the kitchen floor, unable to cry. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't bring tears right away. They bring silence. A silence so heavy that even breathing feels like work. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the hardwood floor around her, while the tablet rested in her lap like evidence from a trial she never knew she was living. Every message she had read replayed inside her mind. The laughing reactions hurt almost more than the words themselves. Those tiny symbols proved that her suffering had become entertainment for people she had spent years trying to love. As the first wave of dizziness intensified, Clara forced herself to think logically. She knew she couldn't spend another hour searching the house. Her doctor had warned her repeatedly that missing medication could trigger dangerous complications. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone and called her cardiologist's office. The receptionist immediately recognized the urgency in her voice. After listening carefully, she instructed Clara to come to the clinic at once. The drive there felt much longer than usual. Every traffic light seemed to last forever. By the time she reached the medical center, her vision had become slightly blurred and a dull pressure had settled across her chest. The nurses quickly checked her blood pressure and heart rate before bringing the physician into the examination room. When Clara explained what had happened, the doctor remained unusually quiet. He wasn't shocked because she had lost medication. He was shocked because someone had intentionally hidden it. He carefully reviewed her condition and explained that another prescription could be issued immediately. However, because of insurance restrictions, there would be additional costs for replacing medication that had supposedly already been dispensed. Clara nodded without complaining. She had always been careful with money, but at that moment staying alive mattered more than her savings. She paid for the replacement medication herself. As she held the new bottle in her hands, an overwhelming wave of relief washed over her. It wasn't just medicine. It represented something much bigger. It represented survival. It represented taking control of her own life for the first time in years. Driving home that afternoon, she noticed something she hadn't seen in a long time. The world was still beautiful. Children laughed in neighborhood parks. Gardeners watered colorful flowers. Elderly couples enjoyed slow walks beneath bright summer trees. Life continued despite betrayal. Maybe hers could too. Over the next several days, Preston never called. Not once. His social media, however, remained full of smiling photographs from Paris. One picture showed him standing beneath the Eiffel Tower with his parents, all of them laughing together. Another captured a family picnic in Switzerland. Then came photographs from Venice, Vienna, Munich, Amsterdam, and the French countryside. Every image looked perfect. Not one photograph included a message asking how Clara was feeling. Not one caption mentioned the wife he had left behind. Friends began commenting beneath the vacation pictures, calling them an incredible family. Clara quietly closed the app. People only see what photographs allow them to see. They never see what is happening outside the frame. About 2 weeks later, Clara received an unexpected phone call from an attorney's office. At first she assumed it was a mistake. The receptionist explained that a woman named Eleanor Whitmore had requested a meeting with her regarding a legal matter involving her late grandfather. Clara was confused. Her grandfather had passed away several years earlier, and she believed every detail of his estate had already been settled. Curiosity eventually led her to attend. The meeting took place inside a small downtown office filled with bookshelves and large windows overlooking a peaceful square. Eleanor greeted Clara warmly and apologized for contacting her so unexpectedly. She explained that while reviewing old estate documents connected to a property dispute, they had discovered an overlooked investment account that legally belonged to Clara as the only surviving beneficiary. At first Clara thought she had misunderstood. The attorney slid several documents across the desk. The account had quietly grown for years. Its value now exceeded $1 million. Clara stared at the paperwork in disbelief. The inheritance had nothing to do with luck. Her grandfather had invested patiently for decades. Because of administrative errors and unresolved paperwork, the account had remained untouched until now. Eleanor congratulated her gently before explaining the transfer process. As Clara left the office later that afternoon, she didn't feel excited. She felt strangely calm. Money had never been her greatest dream. Freedom was. For the first time in years, she realized she finally possessed enough financial security to make choices without fear. She no longer depended on Preston. She no longer depended on anyone. That realization changed something deep inside her. She stopped waiting for phone calls that never came. She stopped checking his vacation pictures. Instead, she focused entirely on herself. She resumed physical therapy. She met regularly with her cardiologist. She hired a nutrition coach who specialized in heart health. She joined a local gardening club simply because flowers had always made her happy. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the exhausted woman who had spent years apologizing for existing began returning. One sunny afternoon while volunteering at the city's botanical gardens, Clara met a retired horticulturist named Graham Mercer. Graham had gentle eyes and the habit of noticing small details others ignored. He recognized the rare flowers Clara admired before she even spoke about them. They spent hours discussing gardens, architecture, and the surprising resilience of plants damaged by storms. He never asked intrusive questions. He never treated her illness as an inconvenience. He simply listened. Over the following weeks, they became friends. Nothing more. For Clara, friendship itself felt healing. Meanwhile, Europe slowly became less exciting for Preston. Travel wasn't as perfect as the photographs suggested. Arguments erupted over hotel reservations. His father injured his ankle while hiking. Unexpected expenses multiplied. Most importantly, Preston discovered that the emotional caretaker he had always taken for granted wasn't there anymore. Clara had quietly managed birthdays, appointments, bills, insurance paperwork, home maintenance, family gifts, holiday planning, and countless invisible responsibilities. Without realizing it, Preston had depended on her for almost everything. Now those responsibilities simply disappeared. Credit card payments were missed. Insurance documents expired. House maintenance requests went unanswered. Important tax notices accumulated in the mailbox. For the first time, Preston realized how much work Clara had carried without recognition. One afternoon in Italy, he finally called. Clara answered calmly. His voice sounded strangely uncertain. He casually asked how she had been. She politely replied that she was doing much better. He never mentioned the medication. He never apologized. Instead, he complained about travel stress and how difficult the vacation had become. Clara listened quietly. Then she wished him a pleasant afternoon before ending the call. Afterwards she smiled sadly. She had finally stopped expecting him to become someone he had never chosen to be. Several more weeks passed. Then another unexpected event changed everything. While organizing documents needed for the inheritance transfer, Clara reviewed years of financial records. One bank statement caught her attention. Then another. Then another. Several withdrawals had been made from their joint savings account over the previous 2 years. Large amounts. Always just small enough to avoid attracting attention. She compared dates. Many matched transfers into accounts connected to Preston's parents. The total exceeded $180,000. Money she had believed was being saved for medical emergencies and retirement. She requested complete banking records. The evidence became impossible to ignore. Without discussing it with her, Preston had been quietly financing his family's lifestyle for years. The European vacation. Luxury purchases. Home renovations. Even expensive gifts. Many had been partially funded with money Clara herself had earned before becoming ill. She sat beside her dining room window, surrounded by paperwork, while bright afternoon sunlight illuminated every page. The truth was no longer hidden. It was documented. Signed. Dated. Verified. She wasn't simply married to a man who failed to protect her. She had been married to someone who allowed her trust, her health, and even her financial future to be sacrificed for people who had never accepted her. Surprisingly, Clara didn't feel hatred. She felt clarity. And clarity can be far more powerful than anger. She contacted a respected family law attorney the very next morning. Not out of revenge. Out of self-respect. By the end of the meeting, she understood every legal option available to her. As she stepped outside into the warm afternoon sunshine, she took one slow, steady breath. For 12 years she had fought to save a marriage. Now she was finally ready to save herself. The attorney advised Clara not to make any emotional decisions until every document had been reviewed. She agreed. For years she had reacted with patience whenever someone hurt her. This time, she wanted to respond with wisdom. Over the next several weeks, every financial record was examined carefully. Bank statements, investment accounts, mortgage payments, insurance policies, retirement contributions, and property documents all revealed the same painful pattern. Clara had carried far more of the marriage than she had ever realized. Even after her illness forced her to reduce her working hours, much of the household savings had originated from the successful years she spent designing public parks and commercial landscapes. Preston had quietly transferred large amounts to his parents while assuring Clara that their finances were becoming tighter because of rising medical expenses. The lies had been hidden beneath ordinary routines, making them almost impossible to notice until she looked at the entire picture. Instead of feeling consumed by bitterness, Clara experienced something unexpected. Every new document strengthened her determination to build a future that no longer depended on people who viewed her kindness as weakness. She purchased a small notebook and wrote one sentence across the first page: "My healing begins with the truth." Every afternoon she added another page describing something she had learned about herself. She realized she had spent years trying to earn love from people who had already decided she would never belong. She also realized genuine love never requires someone to beg for basic compassion. Her health improved steadily throughout the summer. Daily walks became longer. Her blood pressure stabilized again. Her cardiologist smiled during each appointment because the stress markers that had once worried him were slowly improving. He reminded Clara that medicine could help the body, but emotional peace often helped recovery just as much. Those words stayed with her. The inheritance gave Clara opportunities she had never imagined. Rather than buying luxury cars or expensive jewelry, she invested most of it wisely. She hired experienced financial advisors, diversified the investments, and established a charitable foundation in memory of her late grandfather. The foundation provided emergency medication grants for people who could not afford life-saving prescriptions. She never announced it publicly. She simply wanted no one else to experience the terror she had felt searching desperately for medicine that had been deliberately taken away. News about the foundation slowly spread throughout the city. Local newspapers published heartwarming articles about anonymous donations helping struggling families. Community organizations invited Clara to speak about resilience and hope. Every invitation surprised her because she still saw herself as an ordinary woman trying to rebuild her life. Yet every time she shared her story without anger or hatred, someone approached afterward with tears in their eyes, saying they had finally found the courage to leave a harmful relationship or forgive themselves for staying too long. Meanwhile, Preston's European vacation ended far differently than anyone had expected. 74 days after leaving, the family returned home exhausted, financially strained, and emotionally divided. Months of constant travel had exposed cracks in relationships that expensive hotels could not hide. Small disagreements had become daily arguments. His siblings blamed each other for overspending. Judith criticized everyone around her. Preston found himself returning to a house that felt strangely unfamiliar. The flowers in the front garden looked healthier than ever. The lawn was perfectly maintained. Fresh paint brightened the front porch. Yet something important was missing. The warmth that Clara had quietly created over 12 years no longer filled the home. Inside the mailbox waited a neatly organized stack of forwarded legal correspondence. On the dining table rested a single envelope addressed to Preston. He opened it slowly. The first page informed him that Clara had officially filed for divorce. The second detailed temporary financial arrangements. The third requested full disclosure of every account, investment, and transfer made during the marriage. He stared at the documents for several minutes before reaching for his phone. Clara answered after several rings. For the first time in years, her voice sounded peaceful. Preston immediately insisted there had been misunderstandings. He claimed his mother had acted without his knowledge. He argued that the messages had been jokes taken out of context. He promised they could fix everything if she simply gave him another chance. Clara listened quietly. She remembered every lonely doctor's appointment. Every holiday spent pretending everything was fine. Every insult she had swallowed. Every tear hidden behind a closed bathroom door. Most of all, she remembered searching desperately for medication while the people who were supposed to protect her laughed together thousands of miles away. Calmly, she explained that forgiveness and reconciliation were not always the same thing. She had already forgiven him because carrying hatred would only continue hurting her own heart. But forgiveness did not erase consequences. Trust, once intentionally destroyed, could not simply be rebuilt with apologies spoken after being caught. She wished him genuine healing. Then she ended the conversation. Several weeks later, mediation began. Preston appeared visibly different. Friends later said he had lost weight and rarely smiled anymore. He repeatedly attempted to convince Clara to reconsider, but she remained respectful and unwavering. The evidence spoke for itself. The hidden financial transfers, the group messages, the deliberate withholding of medication, and years of emotional neglect created a picture that could not be explained away. The settlement concluded fairly. Clara kept the small home she had lovingly maintained. She retained her inheritance, which had always legally belonged only to her. The joint assets were divided according to the law. When everything ended, Clara walked outside into the bright afternoon sunshine feeling lighter than she had in over a decade. Months passed. Autumn arrived with crisp blue skies and golden trees. The charitable foundation continued growing. Volunteers expanded its programs into neighboring communities. Hundreds of people received assistance obtaining essential medications during financial emergencies. Clara often visited the offices herself, greeting every visitor with kindness because she understood how frightening vulnerability could feel. One sunny afternoon while helping organize flowers for a fundraising event, she saw Graham carrying several boxes toward the entrance. He smiled the same gentle smile she remembered from the botanical gardens months earlier. Their friendship had quietly continued throughout everything. He had never pressured her to move on faster than she was ready. He simply showed up whenever she needed practical help, whether assembling garden benches, planting roses, or delivering supplies for the foundation. Their friendship slowly became something deeper. Not because Clara needed someone to rescue her, but because she had finally learned the difference between being needed and being cherished. Graham admired her strength without trying to control it. He celebrated her independence instead of feeling threatened by it. Most importantly, he treated kindness as something ordinary rather than extraordinary. 1 year after the divorce, Clara organized a community garden dedicated to people rebuilding their lives after loss. Survivors of illness, grief, divorce, and hardship worked side by side planting flowers that would bloom season after season. A small bronze plaque stood near the entrance with a simple inscription, "Even the deepest roots begin with one small seed of hope." Visitors often asked why the garden contained so many varieties of resilient plants. Clara would simply smile. Some flowers bloom most beautifully after surviving the harshest conditions. One afternoon, as children laughed along the walking paths and butterflies drifted between blooming roses, Clara stood quietly beside the entrance watching families enjoy the peaceful space she had helped create. She realized she no longer thought about revenge. She no longer wondered why certain people had chosen cruelty. Their choices belonged to them. Her choices belonged to her. She chose healing. She chose generosity. She chose peace. She chose to believe that one person's betrayal should never define another person's future. Before we reach the end of this story, I'd love to hear from you. If you were in Clara's position, do you believe forgiveness is possible after such a deep betrayal, or are some actions simply impossible to rebuild trust from? Leave a meaningful comment below and share the lesson this story taught you. Your words may encourage someone who is facing a difficult season in their own life. As Clara watched the afternoon sun illuminate thousands of colorful flowers stretching across the community garden, she understood something her grandfather had tried to teach her years earlier. Life is not measured by the people who leave us behind. It is measured by the courage we find to keep growing after they do. The people who hid her medicine believed they had taken away her strength. Instead, they unknowingly led her toward discovering it. The woman who once searched every room looking for a missing bottle had become someone who spent her days making sure complete strangers never had to search alone again. Her greatest victory was never the inheritance, the legal settlement, or even the new beginning she found. Her greatest victory was that betrayal never stole her ability to remain kind. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, even after life's deepest betrayals, hope still has the power to bloom.